Welcome to SWPL Gaming. I'm Joel Reed, and today is a special episode. I've got Ben today, aka StonedEdge. You might have seen some images floating around on Facebook or on YouTube about a Nintendo Wii in a Gameboy SP shell. Well, I have the fantastic builder and modder right here on the channel. Ben, talk about yourself a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Joel, first of all, for having me on his channel. I appreciate that, and looking forward to explaining a little bit about the console that I built, which I have right here next to me, which is the Wii SP. So, yeah, a little bit about myself. I joined the community BitBuild about 3 years ago, just getting interested in gaming. I'm not an engineer or anything like that. I just thought what people was doing this kind of thing was really cool. Putting full-sized home consoles into small little gaming shells and really custom. I think it shows people creativity, and I really wanted to be a part of that. I think a couple of years ago, so I joined absolutely no knowledge whatsoever, and I think that's really important to show that you can join these communities with no knowledge, and if you've got the right attitude and willing to ask even questions if they're you might consider them dumb, but if you've put in the research and done your reading and it's a good question, then yeah, we certainly want to hear it. So I started off years back, and here I am today with one of my first ever portable Wii's. So as you can see, I joined 3 years ago. This is my first. I obviously built some others that were sort of open source before this, but yeah, I decided to go ahead and learn in CAD and get involved in PCB design, and yeah, here we are. So I've got I dubbed it the Wii SP, which is like a Game Boy Advance Wii SP, Wii inside of an SP shell, which is pretty insane. Obviously, you can see it's a little thicker than a Game Boy Advance SP. It's about 40 millimeters thick from the lid to the base. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
It just thanks for that, and thanks for being on the channel today. I really appreciate it. I know you're all the way in Japan, and it's really early for you. It's just after 11 over here, so that makes it what for you? Just after 7 then?
Yeah, roughly 7 a.m. here, so it's pretty early, but I was happy to come on and explain a little bit about the console, so no problem.
Yeah, thanks for that. So from what we've seen, it is small, but it looks really comfortable. Is that because of, like, as you were saying, the thickness before? Because it is obviously substantially a little bit more chunkier than a regular SP.
Yeah, it's surprisingly it's quite comfortable, actually. I think anyone who's familiar with an original Game Boy Advance SP knows that that's not the most comfortable console for adult hands anyway. It's it's pretty small face buttons, and I must say, yeah, in terms of width and length, it's identical. So literally, we've taken an SP shell, measured it up, and then we've in CAD we've basically copied the exact same dimensions. So you can imagine it's a little bit uncomfortable in that sense, but because it's thicker, your hands naturally wrap around the battery grips on the bottom here. So as you can see, there's sort of two batteries there, and then you've got a fan and a heatsink. But when you hold it, it feels quite nice to hold. Your fingers grip around the batteries, and it's a lot more comfortable than a Game Boy Advance SP. But it's not as comfortable as you could probably make it. I didn't really have the comfort in mind when I was sort of designing it. It was more just, let's just see how much we can push the boundaries and put a Wii in a Game Boy. So yeah.
Well, and pushed it, you absolutely did. So was it just you that did the build, or did you have any other maybe help from the outside at all?
Yeah, good question. So originally I started this project last year, 2020, the beginning of 2020, and I was doing it up in Fusion and Fusion 360, which is a CAD modeling software. Most people probably know it's really good. And I sort of was 3D printing the case. That was a plan to 3D print it and then paint it in a red color and do it that way. But I met a friend on the forums by the name of DMCKE5, and he's from Australia, same as me. And I just reached out to him and I said I was interested in learning a little bit more about CNC design and sort of how to do machining, and that process was involved in that. So I reached out to him last year, and he said, "Oh, the concept." He was really on board the concept. He thought it was crazy, and he said, "I'd be happy to help you sort of redesign the case for machining." So, just to give a little bit of background, when you 3D print something, it's when you design something, you generally have to design it with the manufacturing process in mind. So, if you're going to 3D print something, you should design it with the idea that you're going to 3D print it, or if you're going to make something like Nintendo does with like a mold, injection molding, then you have to design the case so that it can be injection molded. So I reached out to him, and we sort of started to redo the case from scratch, and we did that in SolidWorks. So just for example, I'm not sure if people would be interested, but when you design a case to be machined, which is with a 3-axis machine, so it's basically you start off with a big square of, say, metal or plastic, and then the tool will come in and it basically will start to cut away material bit by bit, and then you end up with your case. So we had to design the case to be machinable like that. So that took a fair amount of time, and obviously machining the parts on the machine it's a lot more difficult than just 3D printing, pushing a button. So it was pretty intensive, and I worked with him for a few months to get that working. And then obviously the build itself, in terms of wiring everything up and cutting all the parts and etc., which we'll get into, that was mostly done by me. So it was a little bit of a collab, I think, but yeah, it was overall, I'm happy that it's done, and looking to take a break now. I think it was a lot of work.
It's a big project. I mean, you spent a year on that, but you know what? All of that time spent on it definitely paid off. I just wanted to go back a bit in regards to the 3D printing. Did you have to like test a series of different plastics to make sure you got the molds correct, or was it you just found your right material and just went with that one straight away?
No, it's really with 3D printers you can choose several different plastics. There's obviously many different materials. So the standard material is PLA plastic, which is the cheapest and biodegradable and all that. And then you've got PETG, which is a little bit more of a heat resistant material. And you've got other filaments like water filament and carbon fiber, and you can print in many different things. So initially I just printed it in PLA. Then I switched to PETG because PETG basically has a higher melting point. So, it gets pretty toasty inside the case because the Wii is obviously a Wii. So I don't know if you've ever opened up a Wii, but it's got a pretty big heat sink in there to sink all the heat, so that it doesn't overheat the console. So there is a cooling solution in there, and that was the initial plan, was to print it in PETG, so that it doesn't get too hot, because there's not much space to radiate the heat out. It literally has to suck. The fan will suck in air through the back, blows it right out the front vent there. So you have to have some sort of active cooling. But initially, I started to print it in this sort of plastic sort of material here. So this is just a prototype case, but it's feels a bit cheap, but it's mostly for prototyping anyway. But if you don't have a CNC machine, it is expensive to get the cases designed. That's one thing I found with the hobby, is that there's a big upfront capital cost for creating cases, particularly high quality cases. So you can't just spend $100 and get a high quality case. Generally, you have to spend, to machine this case. I had a friend do it for me, but if you were really going to go, professionally get it done, you'd be looking upwards of at least, $700, $800 for one particular case. So the other option you can print in is resin, and I've got another case here. I'll just show you. So this is another case that I designed, printed
nice,
in.
though.
Yeah, thanks. So this one would be like the fantastic kind of N64 style cases, but this one's done in resin, and then spray painted in a transparent red. So as you can see, there's many different options you can do the case in, but most people, 3D printing is the easiest, and if you can get a good finish with post processing, so getting some sandpaper and just making it all smooth and stuff. But obviously, it can't beat the quality of a proper machine. So that's I have to say thanks to my friend for making this project as good as it was, because he was a big help. So.
No, absolutely. I was looking at the finished product you got there. Did you do like a sort of a frosting effect to it, or is it completely transparent?
No, so it's not completely transparent case. We sort of decided what we wanted to do, and acrylic finish, it's an acrylic plastic, so acrylic is generally absolutely clear before you take it out of the machine or before you put it through the machine. But in order to get it sort of really, really smooth, there's a couple of options you can do. One is sanding with sandpaper, so you can come in and sand it inside and out with sort of a high grit sandpaper with wet sanding, and that will make it really clear like glass. The other option is using a sort of clear spray paint, so just spray painting it in like a clear paint to make it clear. But it's very difficult inside. There's a lot of intricate sort of parts. I've got another prototype here, so you can see this is the custom sort of PCB that's designed, that has all of the parts like the SD card and folding wheel, headphone jack, USB-C port. But inside, this one has a little bit of support material left on it, but you can see that like it's hard to sand all in between these parts, like to get the sandpaper in there. So we just decided to go with like a frosty look. And to do that,
it looks so cool.
Thanks. Yeah. So to do the frosty finish, to get that effect, basically you run it through a sand blaster machine. So it's little particles of sand, and they just hit it like from all angles, basically, for about 5 minutes, and it gives that effect. So that's what we went with.
Yeah, and it looks awesome, by the way. So yeah, I'm all for that frosted look.
I appreciate it. I mean, I'd love to make more for people. I really would, because I've had a lot of people, they obviously love it, and it would be a great concept to make into a product, but it's very difficult to do that, given that the boards have to be chopped. Like literally, it's a chopped down Wii motherboard. So I've got a motherboard here. You can see this is the size that it has to get down to basically fit in the case. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, a motherboard is generally it's pretty big, right? And then to chop this down, you've got conceptually everything's there. So the GPU, RAM, and CPU is all the Wii, and the NAND memory is all the Wii needs to function. So it has to be chopped quite a bit to get that down. But that's all manual labor, and it's hard to automate that. So it's tough to build as a sort of business, but as a hobby, it's great.
Yeah, I could imagine it's difficult. Did you have to like maybe pull off like the NAND chip and all that kind of stuff while you're trying to obviously cut it down to size? Because I would imagine there's a bit of vibration going on there.
Yeah, so there's basically there's a great sort of community board that helps to relocate that. So when I say relocation, that essentially means just pulling off an IC or some sort of component and then moving it to the place that it needs to be. So the Wii has several different things it needs to boot up to work, and one of those is the NAND flash memory. And to relocate that, it's usually on the edge of the board, so you have to use basically a hot air station to take it off, and then you'll have to resolder it onto a flex PCB, which is I have a flex PCB here. So basically, it looks something like this.
Okay, so I see. Yeah.
Basically, solder the flash memory on there, and then directly to the motherboard. So that's really quite a difficult relocation for me, but this board makes it really easy, and that's a board designed by one of the community members at Relio. So that helps with the relocation, but it's certainly it's not easy soldering. It's quite tough, and the NAND memory chip is a difficult package to solder. So it's for advanced soldering. Probably an advanced soldering project, I would definitely say.
Yeah, it is difficult, and just looking at that, it looks difficult. There's definitely a lot of work that's gone in. I mean, if I go back, maybe 8 years ago, I remember seeing a video online. A guy was doing something where he was fitting a Nintendo 64 into like a red shell, and he sort of left on how to build it. And I went on eBay, typed in, got my solder gun and all the solder iron and all of that kind of stuff. Got to the next point when I was looking at these wires, and they were just so thin, and I was just like, "Yep, that's not happening." So, so the question I want to ask you is, in your mind, you're like, "Yep, I'm gonna jump on board. I'm gonna attempt this task." But at any point, did you think, "Wow, what am I getting myself into?"
Well, I think that's a good question. I think you have to go back all the way until when I first joined the community. I think everyone probably feels the same a little bit who's got no experience coming into soldering. And particularly this level of soldering, it's not like you're soldering thick wires or jumpers or anything like that. You have to solder tiny, thin, hair-like wire to the wires of the Wii. So it's certainly a difficult soldering project. And I think when most people start, they think, oh, it'll be a breeze, and then they actually buy all the things, and then they start getting started, and they'll make a mistake, and then they'll get disappointed. But you know, there's plenty of more easier projects than mine to start off. So, you know, if you come and join the community, there's plenty of open source cases that people can have a go at. If you like a case that you see and you want to, you can't be bothered designing it, or you don't think you have the time or skill, you can just have a go at, you know, using their cases. And there's a lot more space, so you don't have to trim the Wii down as far as I did. You don't have to do any crazy relocations. You can just solder everything up one by one, and it's really good practice to learn how to build a Wii and get into soldering and understand more about it. So I think when I first started, I didn't really think it was going to be difficult. I thought, you know, people had done it before, and I thought it was going to be okay. But then when you actually realize the amount of components that you need to solder up, like the batteries, and things have changed in terms of the technology that we use in the community. So there never used to be all these circuit boards and like stuff like that. Everything had to be, you know, hand wired to thick components, and it was a little bit more difficult than it is now. But no, I think if yeah, to answer your question, I think it was a little bit scary when you first join, but you know, you make mistakes and then you ask questions, and I think you learn that way. So I'd recommend anyone to have a shot. It's something anyone can get into, even if you're not an engineer or anything like that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, before I go down that route, I'm going to continue just to perfect the noob level which I'm at, which is Game Boy Color modding to an extent. I'm going to get used to that first.
It's all good practice, I think, for getting to wherever you want to get to. No, I agree.
Awesome. So there were a couple of things that really stood out, and I think what was it like with the Hinge? First off, did you come into any kind of barriers with that at all?
A little bit, yeah. It was not as difficult as I thought it was going to be, actually. And I think I overthought it a little bit. Like, I first of all, I was worried that because the screen is a 3.5-inch VGA panel, it's a lot thicker than, and it has a driver board as well, so it's a lot heavier than the original Game Boy Advance SP screen and setup. Obviously, all the components that drive the screen in the original are in the base of the case. But if you look at my design, the screen driver board is sort of, you know, on top, and then underneath that is the screen. So it's a little bit thick, so that I was worried that the hinges weren't going to be able to handle the weight.
Okay.
And I suppose that's where the 3D printing really helped, was that I was able to print some cases, you know, and then sort of fit the hinge in. I designed the hinge in CAD so that I'd made sure that it was the right thickness, and then I could design basically the internal part of the hinge around that. So the hinge really just snapped right in. It was really quite. I had to sand the holes of the hinges down a little bit to get them to fit. So I think they shrunk a little bit in 3D printing. So that was a little bit of a mistake on my part, but it was easy to sand them down and fit them in. And then basically what happens is the screen, there's two parts of the hinge. So you've got the outside part that basically stays fixed, and then the inside part that rotates. And basically the screen clamps down onto that inside part. And then when you rotate it, I'll sort of show you here, when you sort of pull it open, you can see that it's not doesn't snap down like the original. It sort of just flops because the screen's quite heavy. But when you pull it back here, you know, it snaps right into place, and it doesn't overextend at all. So it's not perfect, but it still holds the weight of the screen, which is the main point of the hinge. And you can see it there, like this sort of, you know, it does snap down, and it's a perfect viewing angle to play. So that was difficult to get those working, I must say. And there's other projects that use different hinges. Like the 3DS hinge is probably a little bit easier to use, given that it just snaps into multiple positions quite easily. And there's like I think there's two viewing angles. With the SP, you've only got one, I think, one or two. But yeah, it's not perfect, I must say, but it was really difficult. That was one of the most difficult parts of the design, was to get that right. But no, I'm happy with how it works, and it holds the weight of the screen, which is the main thing, and it's pretty easy to replace them if they get, you know, they wear down, so it's
Yeah.
no problem.
I see also as well, because obviously when you flap the screen down, the buttons underneath, they're really flush. How did you get
Yeah,
that to work then? So, because I can see there's like obviously indentations where they fit. Was that? Yeah.
yeah. So basically, how we did the buttons was, yeah, when I was designing it, we sort of we didn't know. Well, I didn't know whether I wanted to use. There's several different sort of joysticks you can use to build it. So one of them would be 3DS sliders, which is sort of makes more sense for a clamshell, because if you look at Nintendo's clamshells, like the DS, DS Lite, oh sorry, DS Lite didn't have one, but the 3DS, they all had that circle pad, right, that you
Mm.
can move around and use. But I decided I really like the Switch joysticks, and they're a little bit harder to design around for a clamshell, because obviously if you sort of put them level with the front of the case, when you try and shut the screen, it's going to get stuck.
Yeah.
So I basically designed like a conical hole inside where the Switch stick sits, so you can fully rotate at 360 degrees, and as you can see there, it's sort of perfectly flush. They don't stick out of
Yeah.
the top of the case. So that was a really sort of not too difficult to design around, but the internals of the case had to change a little bit to make sure that, you know, you had to design internally like something to push the switch sticks up a little bit so that they would sit there. And no, but they feel excellent. And you can, the software in here that runs the GameCube controller, the little chip there, the IC, is a masterpiece. It really helps with, you can calibrate the sticks, and you know, if they start to get that infamous drift going, you can program them so that they won't
Oh,
drift
okay.
anymore. So it's that's a nice feature to have as well.
So if you did get drift, you wouldn't have to dismantle the whole unit. You could just program it in.
Exactly, you can, yeah, go into the
That's so
software on
cool.
there and adjust the dead zones. And that credit has to go to Aurelio, who's a great member of our community, who helps out with a lot of the software side of things, and hardware as well. So he designed that controller IC.
Yeah, so it's still on the buttons, but in regards to software, I did see on the video where you could do the button test. How did you get those triggers to? It's like emotion. You can sense how hard they press. Like I don't see that on handhelds. Not on
Yeah,
these ones that
it
we're
was a
getting these
big
days.
achievement, I think, for us. And it was sort of just a test. We didn't really know whether it was going to work or not, and how well it was going to work. And I must admit, they're not perfect, but I think it's pretty damn cool to be able to have, you know, analog triggers that don't actually use like a physical mechanism of if you open up a GameCube controller or anything like that, they tend to have like a potentiometer slide, a potentiometer that you can just, it's a full built-in mechanism. But some controllers, like the Xbox One controller, they have the same concept. So I basically we based the analog triggers on something like that. So the way it works is you have a magnet, and the magnet is sort of positioned inside of the triggers on both sides. And then I have two Hall sensors, which are basically little ICs that measure the I won't get too technical here, but anyway, you sort of use the Hall sensors and the magnets, and then when you move the magnet in front of the sensor, it basically reads a value depending on the the strength of the magnetic field. So basically, what happens is the magnets are quite large, and the Hall sensor is quite small. So you don't really get much of a range without doing any scaling in software. So you have to basically measure the value that you are receiving from the Hall sensor, and then scale that so that it gets a full range of motion. So if I didn't do anything, if I just put the magnets in there with the sensors, and I didn't do anything in software, you would just basically get maybe half the range of an analog trigger. So I had to scale them down so that you would get the full range of motion. And then, yeah, basically that's just, they worked just first try. It was excellent. So, you know, the games like, you know, any racing games,
Mm.
you know, that uses analog triggers in terms of acceleration, and Super Mario Sunshine and Flood, when you know, want to use the jetpack and sort of adjust the level of water that you spray. There's some other games that I'm probably missing as well in there as well, but no, they work excellently. And then obviously with the GameCube, you have a digital button at the bottom as well. So In order to get that to work, we use like a little piece of wire, and that sort of sits in the triggers as well. So when you push the button, it will have analog feel, and then when you push it down really hard, there's a little click at the end to represent that digital press. So the triggers were certainly hard to design. I could talk about them all day, but that's yeah.
You could go as technical and as deep with that as well, because I'm just gonna throw this message out there. So Pal Kiddy and Ambinic, this is what we want. This is what we want to see in handhelds going forward.
Okay, it's I'm not too familiar with that market, but obviously, with my new project that I'm designing with the retro light, that's something that is probably similar to what these guys are doing with the emulation and stuff. So this project here is zero. You can emulate certain consoles, like the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy, and literally it's literally everything. It's really great that we can do a lot. So you can even do PS1 and some other cool stuff as well. So plus you get the features of GameCube and Wii as well. So but yeah, I think I'd have to pick up one of those Ambinics. I think they certainly look like great value. Obviously not as good as can't play Wii and GameCube games, unfortunately, but maybe we'll get there someday.
Yeah, they're gonna have to consider on scaling the power up if they want to do that. But they keep on building these they keep building these duplicates, man. So people are expecting, right, maybe the next one's gonna have the power to do it, and it doesn't. But
Right.
but they look pretty good. I mean, at the moment they've got this is one of Ambinic's newer ones. This is the RG351V for vertical, so it looks much like a Game Boy. You got your little triggers there, but no, the triggers are nowhere near as sophisticated as yours. Yeah, I just had my buttons switched out, so they were just all black, and I got them changed to PS buttons, which was pretty simple, pretty cheap. Messing around there. So
That's lovely.
yeah, thank you. So in regards to the PCBs and cutting that, because you said you wanted to delve in a little bit deeper with that. So I'm not super technical, but there are people that will watch this and they will understand. So yeah, if you've got any tips around that or anything you want to share on that, go for it.
In terms of the PCB design, there's a number of different circuits on the board. I'm just looking at it now. So you've got obviously an audio amplifier that's a digital amplifier that takes raw digital audio from the Wii and then outputs it to speakers and headphones. So that's controlled by two ICs, one amp, and then the other one is a microcontroller that handles all the volume adjustments and things like that. Then you have to have some sort of battery management IC system, so something that safely charges the batteries. So I think when you do Game Boy mods and stuff like that, there's a little. I've done a few Game Boy mods myself, so I'm a big fan of Boxy Pixel and his amazing stuff. And these metal shells, and he sells like a little blue USB-C PCB. It's similar to that. So
been hearing a lot of good stuff about that.
Yeah, the Boxy Pixel shells are excellent, and a lot of very high quality. And anyway, he sells a little PCB on there that people are probably familiar with. Anyway, you have to have something similar on this, so something that monitors the battery, make sure that you don't overcharge it so that it blows up. Basically, you don't want to have an explosion in your hands when charging it, and particularly with lithium batteries, when you charge them, there's a specific sort of charge profile that they have to follow. Otherwise, it can damage the batteries. So, and when you charge like a Game Boy battery, usually they're a lot smaller. So something that we're around like 5 volts will do just fine when you charge it. But this one here uses something called power delivery charging. So when you plug in a charger, it will boost the voltage to about 12 volts and charges the batteries at about 2 amps. So it's 12 volts, 2 amps is pretty high for a Game Boy. You'd probably charge it if you were charging a small little cell with that power. You'd be ready to play again in like 15 minutes, but it would be not safe. So the charger here uses it's fully compatible with USB-C chargers. So you can plug in. There's certain profiles programmed into the chip, so you can use like a 12 volt 3 amp charger, 12 volt 2 amp charger, 9 volt 3 amp charger, and the chip will recognize what charge is plugged in, and then will adjust the profiles to whatever you plug in. So you can charge it from USB, basic USB A cable, which is like what most people use. I think Ambinic probably has a USB C to USB A cable. I'm
Yeah.
not particularly sure, but yeah, USB. This one is USB-C to USB-C, so the cable is USB-C at both ends, and it's proper protocol. So you get really fast charging. I mean, it's not that fast. It still takes about 2 hours to charge, but it's decently quick. When you get about 3 hours of gameplay out of it, and it charges in 2 hours, so I think
You
it's not
get
too
3 hours of gameplay out of that. I was gonna
bad.
ask as well. That's really good considering all of the power that goes into that.
Yeah, surprisingly the Wii is not a power hungry console. So it draws about 5 to 6 watts of power, and it's not overly power hungry compared to some of the other consoles of the generation. The PS2 was also not too bad, but once you bumped up to the Xbox 360s and PS3s, you could not make a portable console out of those without using a very beefy. Like you could certainly, if someone can fit a PS3 in this, I will take my hat off and I don't know, I'll do something crazy because I think that would be literally impossible given the battery that you would need to put in there. But yeah, the battery lasts. There's 2 cells in the console, and they last just shy of 3 hours. So it's by the time you finish the batteries, your hands will probably be cramping up anyway because it's comfortable, but 3 hours of gameplay on it, yeah, you'd probably have sore fingers. I think.
Yeah,
If
no,
I'm honest.
I mean, battery power is something that gets asked a lot when it comes to buying these retro handhelds. And for me personally, I don't want to be playing it for any longer than an hour in general anyway, because one, the screen's pretty small, so you're probably going to cause some stress on your eyes. And then obviously, as you're saying, you know, you could develop cramps. So I think like if you're getting 3 hours out of that, that's some good gameplay right there. That's good timing right there.
Yeah, I think it's certainly what you need. You can also plug it in and play and charge at the same time. So if you want to just keep it
Oh,
running on wall power, you can just do that and then power it through the USB-C cable as well. So that certainly works. That does get pretty hot, I must admit. The case gets decent. As I said, the thermals in there do a good job, but everything's obviously there's a full Wii and it's pretty cramped. So after about an hour, like your hands, you can start to feel the case warming up pretty warm. It doesn't get hot, but it's certainly not uncomfortable. But you can, in winter, it's a nice little hand warmer for your hands. So
that's cool. That is cool. When
yeah,
you're sitting at the bus stop outside, it's a bit cold. You just, your hands will be warm.
exactly. That's right.
That's really cool. So for noob modders like myself, or for those that just want to delve straight into doing a project like yours, do you have any tips for them at all?
In terms of tips, yeah, I say just give it a shot. I mean, and don't get too discouraged if you don't know what you're doing. If you really want to build one, I've made it all open source. But again, I would probably, if you've never sold it before and you're a bit nervous, then I think probably picking one up and having an attempt at this, you're probably going to just get frustrated and then give up. So I think if you want to build a Wii as your first project, I think it's come over to the BitBuilt forums and have a look at what we do and take a look at the CAD model repository thread in the forums and see what's available. There's a couple of cases that I'd recommend, such as the GWI and that are a lot thicker and easier to build. But yeah, in terms of tips, I think you need a bunch of tools to get started. So it's not cheap to get into the hobby, but it's certainly skills that you can take with you for life. I think, using a Dremel and cutting up the motherboard is not just, if you buy the Dremel, you're not just going to use it for one thing. You're going to use it for several things, like, in your future life, building and sanding down things, using it for general purposes. So first thing I think is don't skimp out on tools. Like, don't think you're gonna be able to come in and use like the cheapest tools and spend
Mm,
$20-$30 and build something amazing. You probably could, but it would be an absolute struggle. I think you're better off just spending the initial $100, say, on like a very nice soldering iron, like that you can adjust the temperature on, and a good Dremel to cut the motherboard. So I think not cheaping out on tools is what I'd recommend initially. And then just if I think asking questions, reading a lot really helps. So there's a lot of good resources that are available. Like there's guides on the forums to help people sort of show them where to make connections and solder things up. So if you can follow a guide, I think you can certainly build a Wii portable, particularly ones that are already open source. So the difficult part is designing your own case, and I think that's sort of further down the line. If you get interested and you want to learn more about, you've had enough of, you've built a case that was already available, and you think, I want to make something that's special to me, then you can sort of go down that path eventually. But I think, yeah, just having a shot, saying, oh, this is too difficult for you, or this feels too difficult, and like I can never solder like this. I think that's the wrong attitude. I think you've just got to have a shot and say, like, I'm gonna do this, and even if I make a mistake, I'll keep going and reach the end goal. I think most people just think it's a really difficult project, and it is difficult, but I think anyone can do it if they ask the right questions and just keep their head high. I think getting discouraged is pretty easy to do when you're designing something so difficult, no matter what hobby you're doing, right? So I think people just got to keep their head high and ask lots of questions and be keen to learn. And I think you showed, if you got an interest in what I built, that's the first start, right? Is recognizing, okay, I've got an interest in this, and this is awesome, and I want to have a shot. And I think if you're really passionate, then you can do it. So,
well, if you've got any kind of links or anything, I'll get you to drop them in, and then the watchers can get that in the description below. So absolutely, you can pop some links in there.
I'll post some links, not just to my projects, but some beginner sort of, maybe some tools that people can use, and also to get started, and then some basic cases that people can also use to build one of these if they want to get started. So no problem.
Absolutely. So I just got a couple of final questions. So in regards to the build, if you could, or if you was to do it all again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, God. Good question. It's quite, what would I do differently? Probably the buttons. I would say the buttons are not the best feeling buttons. That's really important when you're playing games for a long time, like to have really good responsive buttons. And the SP buttons, I really like those SP buttons, and Nintendo is the master of their button design, obviously. And I must say the buttons leave a lot to be desired. They're resin printed, so the resin is not 100% smooth. The triggers are not resin printed. The triggers are, I didn't touch, too much on the triggers, but the triggers, basically there's a hinge that if you've ever opened up an SP, you'll notice there's like a little spring inside that sort of holds the trigger, and when you push it, the spring will bring it back to its original position. But on my portable, there's no springs. It's basically all built into the actual triggers. So when you push the trigger down, the plastic will flex a little bit, and then the plastic will return to its original sort of position. So we had to make sure that we use the plastic that is very sort of that doesn't change its shape. So if you use a different style of plastic, you keep pushing it, eventually what will happen is that plastic will just flex, and then it will never work again. So we had to make sure that we picked a material that was going to sort of be would flex forever, basically. So it would never put stress on the hinges, so to speak, of the triggers. But yeah, if I could do anything again differently, it would be definitely the buttons. I think I'd put probably a proper membrane underneath, so I might spend time designing like an actual Nintendo style membrane that goes underneath, so that when you push it, you get like a nice squishy tactile feel. When you push the button, it's a little bit clicky, I must say, because there's a little membrane underneath that obviously acts as the button. But if you ever look at the SP, for example, there's like a soft squishy membrane, and then underneath that you've got the button itself. So I would definitely, if I could do that again, I would put spend more time on the buttons and make a proper membrane. In terms of other things, I don't really know. I'm pretty happy with it, to be honest. It's there's not too much I would change. The triggers are perfect. The headphone jack is awesome. I don't know. It's. I think we pushed it to the limits with this project, and
It's
I'm
a
really
fantastic build.
What I would do differently. So pretty pleased. But probably the buttons are the worst part of it, I would say.
Yeah. So I've got two difficult questions for you. So strap yourself in.
Yep.
What's your favorite retro game?
Oh God. Good question. I don't know if Pokemon is considered a retro game. I suppose it is in the original games.
Yeah.
I'm just big nostalgic. I've got big nostalgia for the original Pokemon Blue and Red, and I really miss the. I think when you were a kid, a child, you used to go around to your friend's house and you try and there was no real you know, at least when I was young and playing on the original Game Boy, there was no internet that you could just look up and try and sort of figure out what you needed to do to get to the next stage of the game. So I really enjoyed. I had good memories of taking my Game Boy around to my friend's house and you know, asking him questions about how did you do this, and like, you know, we'd trade together. It was more of a interactive, I think, personal sort of thing. Like it was, you know, you would be there in person, like, you know, battling over link cable. It was really felt really real, compared to, you say, battling over Wi-Fi, which is what everyone does now. But
Yeah.
I think the concept of Pokemon is just amazing, and you know, it's just, I've been hooked on the franchise ever since I was a kid, and I still love it. You know, I think things are changing with Pokemon. There's a lot of controversy that goes on at the moment with the new releases of the Diamond and Pearl, and but I think, you know, I think Pokemon is really, particularly with their new game for the Switch, right? The open world game that they're going to make is, I think that's a really good step in the right direction for Game Freak, and you know, I think they're trying to push. I mean, Pokemon concept is awesome, but you know, when you've been doing it for 20 years, it's I think some innovation is needed, and hopefully this will really sort of reinvigorate fans to get them back into the franchise. So I think Pokemon is one of my favorite franchises, and then yeah, obviously the original Super Mario is something I love. It's just a simple concept, and you know, I think it's the hours of fun, the challenge of it is great, and yeah, I think Miyamoto, who designed Mario, has done an awesome job. So they're my two favorite retro games.
Yeah. Likewise. I mean, Pokemon, it had a big impact on me. And every one of those games that have come out, it's been hours upon hours of gameplay on each of them.
Yeah, they are. Crazy. They're an addictive game. I mean, now it's like there were enough. You spent enough time playing those games when, you know, you were a kid, and like there was only 150 to catch. And now there's like over 700. It's just I think kids, yeah, I don't know, maybe they think they've got more time than they used to, but I certainly can't as an adult now. I much prefer, I must say, building these little devices. And then I certainly enjoy playing them, but I don't play it as much as I would probably like. But yeah.
Have you got any new projects on the horizon at all? Or
yeah,
you don't. If you're not allowed to talk about them, you don't have to.
No, that's all right. In terms of Wii portables, not at the moment. I think I'm going to take a break from those. I might eventually put a Wii portable in something a little bit more comfortable to play with. But at the moment, not on that side of things. But yeah, as I said before, and I showed you briefly, we're designing a new portable, me and my friend, based on the Retro Lite. The Compute Module 4, which is a little system on a chip board from Raspberry Pi. So that will emulate games all the way up to Dreamcast. So you'll be able to play your N64 games, Dreamcast. And that's more of a traditional sort of retro handheld. So that'll be just a lot more comfortable. And it looks pretty much identical to a Switch in most ways. So you're going to have a 5-inch screen. There'll be USB-C, HDMI, all the sort of bells and whistles. Controller, and it's going to be amazing. I'll send a picture to you, and you can maybe put it on the screen now. But we're having the cases all done in metal, so they'll be anodized, and yeah, they look really. I'll show you. Yeah, everyone will be able to see the pictures on the screen, but that's certainly a project that I'm super excited about. So I've been designing the circuit board, and we still have some code to write and stuff for that, but once that's done, that's going to be probably, yeah, I think I won't need any other retro gaming device until China starts to put out anything that's better. I think is it the GPD or something, the ultra super computers that can emulate like all the way up to PS3. They're amazing. So I think that'll be the future once they can somehow reduce the prices. But until then, I think the little Raspberry Pi handhelds and that are going to do the job just fine. So that's the next project I'll hopefully be able to tell more about in the near future.
Yeah, mate, get stuck in. And my last question: Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, or Tekken?
I'm not a huge fan of fighting games. I played Tekken a little bit on PS1. That was great fun. And Mortal Kombat, that game gave me nightmares, so I sort of just stopped playing.
It's a bit rough, isn't it? It's a bit gory.
as the power of consoles got better and better and the graphics got better, I think that game became just more scarier as time went on. So I just it's always a good laugh to play that with your friends, but I think if you're playing that like and enjoying seeing what's going on, I think this it's probably not good. So anyway, that's my fighting game experience. Not too great.
I'm more of a Street Fighter player myself. I still play now Street Fighter 5 on my PS4. But Ben, thanks for your time, mate. I really appreciate you coming on the show. It was awesome to have you explaining how you went through with the build stuff. Is there anybody you want to give a quick shout out to while we're here, or?
I think just big thanks to the project partners that I work with and the community, the members that make the community what it is. I think the circuits and stuff. A lot of them I didn't design. I just took the concept and put them on a circuit board and connected all the parts. And there's a big community behind this. So to DMCK5, the project partner who machined all of the case. And he's the guy I'm working with on the next project. So. The case that you saw before, the retro light case, that is a lot of his amazing work. So big shout outs to him. And then G-Man Mods, who is a pretty well known YouTuber. He does excellent stuff. He made the smallest N64 portable, which was in the Guinness World Book of Records. And he's a big help in the community. So big thanks to him and Aurelio as well. Who is part of BitBuilt, and he designs a lot of awesome stuff. So shout outs to those three guys. They were a big help with this project. So that's thanks for having me on today, Joel. I appreciate it. I hope everyone got an insight into the portable, and I hope that we can see some more members perhaps having a go and building a Wii, because there's a great library of games to play that, on the go is something that I think everyone wants to have. So I recommend people come and join.
Absolutely. Ben, thanks again for your time. I really appreciate it. And guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to leave you with some gameplay clips with sound. So enjoy, and I'll catch you down the road. Take care, stay safe. Peace.
You